Tornadoes. They twist. They turn. They kill.
Go, 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 go!
These are the stories from people who work in extreme weather.
We just lost a big window.
It was just like a bomb went off.
And nobody is coming to save you.
And the storms they'll never forget.
Wham! Crack! Bang! Bang! Bang!
Holy we're going to die.
Plus, the how and why behind the world's worst weather.
Mother Nature is one mother.
They can come out of nowhere. They can outrun the world's fastest bullet train. And they tear up everything in their path. Tornadoes, some of the deadliest weather Mother Nature can dish out.
The path of a tornado is quite unpredictable. It tends to want to go in one general direction. However, it can deviate from that path. It's just the nature of the beast.
When most people are running away from tornadoes, Jeff and Kathy Piotrowski are racing toward them. Together, they've chased more than 1,000 tornadoes, filming the wildest weather imaginable.
I mean, we've seen it all. But this event was Mother Nature at its worst.
That's the weather event I will never forget.
May 22nd, 2011. A hot, humid day. The perfect symptoms for wild weather. Jeff and Kathy load their van with state-of-the-art weather-chasing gear. The plan? Track and film a storm they believe is gathering in nearby Kansas.
So I'm looking at radar data, satellite data, and Kathy's doing that as well. We looked at the computer models. There's another wave coming out in the plains. We have a draw line, so you got hot, dry air against warm, moist air, and those two air masses go like that and causes the storms to erupt. All the ingredients are coming together.
Oklahoma's Storm Prediction Center confirms Jeff's forecast. There's an increasing risk of tornadoes in southeast Kansas.
We were getting some rain showers, you know, lightning, thunder, that kind of thing, but things weren't looking quite right.
Jeff can tell from the direction and speed of the winds that a tornado was unlikely to take shape in Kansas. He and Kathy make the most fateful decision of their lives.
That's when we decided to drop south.
Toward Joplin, Missouri, and into the eye of the storm.
The conditions were much better for tornadoes closer to Joplin. And as we drove southeast, the storms looked better.
A tornado was formed with two important ingredients. Heat and humidity is the fuel, and wind shear is the engine that drives these storms. The winds are rapidly changing within and around the tornado.
We got out of the truck. And I looked at the sky, and the storm was rotating like a barber pole, and everything was accelerating like 10 times normal speed. It's a certain look that I've only seen one other time. The last time I saw that, we had an F5.
Tornadoes are rated on a scale from EF0 to EF5, with EF5 being the most destructive.
And so I got back in the truck. And I turned to Kathy. I said, something really bad's gonna start happening.
Ominous clouds grow quickly, switching direction rapidly. Jeff knows it isn't a matter of if a tornado will hit Joplin, but when. Jeff and Kathy continue to chase the storm barreling down on Joplin. It's now developed into an EF2 tornado with wind speeds far faster than their car. Shortly after 5 p.m., forecasters issue a tornado warning. "28 outdoor sirens begin to wail in Joplin. A city of more than 50,000 people in the heart of Tornado Alley, a stretch in the American Midwest where tornadoes are a way of life.
You need to get into that shelter immediately when you hear those sirens sound.
Joplin braces for a hammer blow. But suddenly, the savage winds switch direction, disrupting the storm and reducing the danger to Joplin.
The first storm came out of southeast Kansas. Here's Joplin, and the first storm went to the north of Joplin. It missed Joplin. We had a lot of wind and hail. That storm created a boundary, kind of like a cold front, pushing cooler air from the north, came down into the city of Joplin and stopped.
The worst is over. Or so they thought. A new spinning core spirals up at the southern tip of the storm.
And now all of a sudden it became a conveyor belt of extreme wind shear for that storm to tap into. That was the final ingredient coming together that created this tremendous wind shear. That storm hit that boundary and went crazy.
The initial storm veers north of Joplin, missing the town completely. But in its wake forms a second, more powerful tornado. A deadly sting in the tail.
We get to downtown Joplin. We notice that a new storm is forming back to our southwest of Joplin. And as it comes toward Joplin, it's starting to rotate. All my alarms on my software are going off, such as wind shear. I can see the winds are like pegging the needle at like 150 miles an hour. So I know something horrible is starting to happen.
The instinct that grips Jeff's gut is correct. The city of Joplin thinks the worst is over, but it's actually yet to come. May 22nd, 2011. Veteran storm chasers Jeff and Kathy Piotrowski are following a massive Category 5 tornado as it hurtles toward Joplin, Missouri, a heavily populated city deep in the heart of Tornado Alley. The city needs those sirens now more than ever. Jeff and Kathy race west. They arrive downtown and are immediately aware that something is wrong.
The sirens weren't sounding in the city.
When the earlier storm missed Joplin, local authorities, believing they dodged the speeding bullet, shut down the warning sirens.
And as I drove west, we encountered a police officer on the west side of Joplin.
Let's go, let's go, let's go!
I pulled up beside him, and I told him very quickly that a tornado was coming down. I said, you have to get the sirens going again. It's coming into the city. He picks up the radio, calls dispatch, tells them to sound the siren. The sirens start going off again for the second time.
But it was too late.
It's leveling the south side of Joplin in front of us.
The sky was the blackest I have ever seen. That told me that it was very serious, that there was going to be something just catastrophic getting ready to happen for these residents of Joplin.
By the time the second siren sounds, the tornado has already begun to pound Joplin. Jeff and Kathy try to keep ahead of the twister, but it overtakes them. They're caught in the belly of the beast.
I see this black mass in front of us. I said, Kathy, it's an F5, it's leveling the city.
A tornado can do so much damage so quickly for three reasons, essentially. You have very strong winds. Secondly, it can be fairly wide, as most destructive tornadoes are, so it does more damage. It's a wider path of damage. And because it's a violent tornado, it can just basically churn and destroy everything in its path.
The snarling twister sucks up wreckage and rockets it 10,000 feet into the sky over Joplin.
It created this mile and a half wall of flying debris at well over 200 miles an hour. There's this deafening roar. Me and Kathy are screaming at each other to hear each other because it's so loud.
The Joplin tornado was absolutely deafening.
Jeff and Kathy try to remain at a safe distance from the tornado, but the debris field is so large, it quickly engulfs their vehicle. There's no place to hide.
We had lightning bolts inside the F5. It lit up the tornado from the surface up to about 3,000 feet.
We were actually in the tornado at that point. Your visual that you could see ahead of you was disappearing. So it was getting really dangerous.
It was scary. That was an awe moment. And when I saw that, I was like, oh my gosh. At one point, a piece of rock exploded the driver's side window.
It's the debris. The debris will kill you.
The glass blew in, cut my arm. There's glass over the dashboard, and it's raining inside of us.
If they stay here, they're sitting ducks. So Kathy makes a life and death decision.
I told him to back up. I said, back up, back up. I wanted him to take me seriously. We stopped for just a brief moment, but it was enough time to allow the tornado to do its trajectory where it changed course and it went directly in front of us.
For 38 harrowing minutes, the tornado terrorizes Joplin, unleashing hell across 22 miles. For Jeff and Kathy, every second was gut-wrenching.
We knew we had to abort the chase. I was already caught with glass, the window was out. At that point, we was going into search and rescue mode. I knew people needed help. I took a deep breath. I knew that I had to yell out, who needs help, top of my lungs. And when I did, there were screams from every direction. And I didn't know where to walk first. And I just walked to the closest screaming sound I heard, which was right in front of me. It was a horrific scene. Next door, there were more people crying for help, just going from house to house, taking people out of the rubble. It went on for hours.
The Joplin tornado claimed 158 lives and injured more than 1,100 people. It was the costliest tornado in U.S. history.
Nothing's affected me more than the Joplin EF5. If you think about the 2,400 blocks that were leveled and 1,700 people injured and 100 some odd people died in a matter of minutes from one of the worst disasters in U.S. history, and to be there to film it, but also help the people of the city of Joplin, that is the most important thing to me. I'll never forget about the Joplin EF5.
The entire Joplin tornado chasing experience defined us. I know Jeff's a hero. He had the forethought to think when he saw that policeman to tell him to get the sirens going. And I've had many people tell me that that saved their life.
That was the day that weather changed my life.
The one thing meteorologists can predict about tornadoes is that they're unpredictable. In Joplin, Missouri, a deadly tornado suddenly sprang to life in the wake of another storm, cutting through the town before many residents could take cover. But even when a tornado follows its expected path, getting out of its way can be a matter of life or death. June 2009, Nebraska.
75% of tornadoes that occur in Nebraska occur between May and July. These months are the deadliest for tornadoes because that's when the fuel is the most intense. It's hot, it's humid, and that's what thunderstorm is like.
For those that make a living tracking these tornadoes, one wrong turn can mean the difference between life and death.
Big tornado.
I've been through thunderstorms. I've been through blizzards. I've been through 17 hurricanes. I've almost lost track of the type and number of weather events I've been through.
But only once has Mark been truly afraid while chasing a storm.
This was the first one I got really up close and personal with. I had to get out of the way of this tornado before it caught me. June 17th, 2009 started off like any other storm chase day. My buddies and I were checking the computer models, checking the radar. And what we saw was the potential for some tornado production up in Nebraska. And so we took off after the storms.
But on the way to their tornado target zone, a sudden change in weather takes Mark by surprise.
I was taking a look at my radar on the internet in the car, and two storms had popped up just to my west. So now I had a decision to make. Do I continue on to my original target zone where the parameters look great for tornadoes? Or do I stop and go after these two storms, which also had good parameters and could potentially produce tornadoes? So I pulled the car over to the side of the road. I jumped out of the car, and I got a good look at the bottom of these storms. The one that was closest to me had a shape to it, had a real circular shape, so I could tell that it was really beginning to spin. So this was now a supercell. This storm had the potential to produce a tornado, and I just had to be in the right position to document it.
Just 1 in 1,000 thunderstorms spins into a supercell, a violent storm with a rising vortex of rotating air known as a mesocyclone. 1 in 5 supercells spawns a tornado, and nature's deadliest twisters spiral out of these savage storms.
My storm chaser buddies and I are 2 different cars. I'd had a bit of a frustrating time with my car because it kept overheating, so I had to be a little slower. No, 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 no.
Mark tries to coax his car back on the road. His fellow storm chasers unaware of his predicament.
As we're chasing these storms, these guys got ahead of me, way ahead of me, and I could barely even get them on the radio.
You go on ahead, I'll catch up with you, all right?
Well, the storm decided it was going to accelerate. So it's going faster, and I'm just barely keeping up ahead of it. I'm looking, directly into what we call the mesocyclone, so the center of where the spin of the storm was.
As the storm grows before his eyes, a roadblock forces Mark to drive south, directly into the path of the storm.
I've got 2 options. Either I try to go south and I try to get away from the storm before it overtakes me, or I go east and try to get ahead of the storm and get a bit more of a cushion. The only problem is that all of my east road options are dirt, and I do not want to be driving fast on one of those dirt roads. If you hit any area along that dirt road that's gotten wet, now you're into mud. Now you have to go even slower, or you lose control and you're into the ditch, and now you're in serious trouble. And so I had the sort of choice of 2 really bad options. Go south and likely get hit by that incredibly dangerous part of the storm that might have a tornado in it, or go east along the dirt road and take the chance that I'm not gonna run into mud and that I can go fast enough on this dirt road to keep ahead of the storm. The decision I had to make was, bad or bad. So I decided, you know what, I've gotta go east, I gotta get away from this storm. So I had a chance.
But Mark's gamble doesn't pay off. Heavy rains have turned his escape route into mud.
I lasted about 4.5 seconds before my car just went into the ditch, and that was it. I'm done. I don't know where my friends are. I'm stuck on some road in the middle of nowhere. I didn't know what I was gonna do.
At any second, the supercell could spin into a killer tornado.
If it moves in an unexpected direction, you're in serious trouble.
Mark tries to escape from the muck, but it's no use. He's trapped.
And ahead I saw a barn.
As the storm continues to accelerate, Mark races towards the farmhouse and help.
The farmer and his wife greet me, and the guy says, I got my tractor, and I've got some chains. I'll pull you out. He hooks the car up, and that tractor just goes, and just pulls the car out as if there was no weight to the car at all.
But getting stuck in the mud was nothing compared to what Mark would get stuck in next.
I'm just like, okay, I'm gonna get stuck in the core of this storm. And inside the core is the potential for hail the size of baseballs. I'm hearing wham, crack, bang, bang, bang as this gigantic hail is hitting the car.
Storm chaser Mark Robinson is trapped in the core of a massive supercell thunderstorm as hail the size of baseballs pound his car. Finally, the crushing hailstorm blows over.
I give my friends a call. Turns out my two chaser buddies are in the town next to me.
Mark thinks his storm chase day is over, but in Tornado Alley, weather can change in a heartbeat.
So I hook up with the guys. We're in the parking lot, sort of the far end, and I look down at the radar, and we watch this storm pop up right in our target zone, and it's the best looking storm that we've seen. I thought, I've got a shot, I've got a chance to salvage this day. And suddenly, I see this weird little shape appear under the storm. I grab my buddy and I say, "Is that what I think it is?" And he looks over, sees it, and goes, "Whoa!" What we're seeing is a tornado being born at the other end of the parking lot. At this point, we're almost directly under the most dangerous part of the storm. This is the first time I've been that close to a tornado. And this is also the first time I've ever been in the path of a tornado.
In a split second, the chaser becomes the chased.
Now.
Back into the car I go. Down that road I tear.
They take off with the tornado snapping at their heels. Mark quickly checks his GPS and can barely believe his eyes. If he's going to escape the tornado, he needs to get off this road, but there's nowhere to turn.
From a storm chaser's perspective, this is completely the worst case scenario because now I'm in the danger area.
Mark is now playing a dangerous game of cat and mouse with the racing tornado.
I'm looking in the rearview mirror and I can see this tornado beginning to pull trees and bushes out of the ground, probably about half a mile at this point behind me. I'm watching this thing and realizing that it is a massive tornado. This thing had to be quarter mile, half mile wide.
The tornado surges forward and heads straight for Mark.
This thing is coming directly at me. For the whole day, all I'd wanted to do is see a tornado. And now that I had a tornado, the last thing I wanted to see was the tornado. This thing was relentless. It was quite literally chasing me down the road, and I could not get away from it.
With his car in danger of overheating, Mark drives as fast as he can, but can barely stay ahead of the speeding tornado.
All I can think of is, can I get away from this? Or am I going to not come home to see my little ones?
At last, he's able to get far enough ahead to escape the trajectory of the rampaging tornado.
And I just watched it in my rearview mirror cross over the road right where I was.
Luckily, the tornado categorized as an EF3 skips past the nearby town. Miraculously, no one is injured. But for Mark, this tornado encounter was too close for comfort.
I've usually got a pretty good idea of what these tornadoes are going to do, but once in a while, Mother Nature's gonna throw you a curveball. I've seen over 50 tornadoes in my life, but this is one I'll never forget.
Tornadoes remain deadly and often unpredictable, despite the efforts of scientists to understand the nature of the beast. The Joplin tornado took the city by surprise with its deadly second wind. The tornado was relentless as it surged toward fleeing chasers. Sometimes tornadoes hide in plain sight. They can hit before you even see them coming. May 31st, 2013. A massive tornado touches down in El Reno, Oklahoma, 30 miles west of Oklahoma City. It's a monster. Huge. Fast. And unpredictable.
80% of the time, a tornado's path or trajectory is predictable. It's the other 20% of cases that there can be an aberration in the tornadic path, and that's the unfortunate tragedy with El Reno.
The El Reno tornado is so unpredictable, it catches even the most experienced storm chasers in a deadly line of fire.
I think it's safe to say I'm addicted to weather 24/7. In my job, in my personal life, I'm always glued to radar, satellite, models. I've been out there, I've seen what the power of tornadoes can do.
There is a large tornado right behind us here. If you can see where that little white is, that is likely the edge of the tornado.
This day changed everything that I thought I knew about tornadoes. This day will be one that I will never forget.
Left, go left!
The day the El Reno tornado struck, Jacqueline and her colleagues were on a 3-week assignment chasing storms in the American Midwest's notorious Tornado Alley.
May 31st, 2013 happened to be our final chase day on our trip. Our main objective out there is to photograph and video the storm. We send that footage back to the Weather Network all the time because it helps us show our viewers what it's like to actually see that in the field. When it comes to looking at forecast data, we are literally glued to our phones, our laptops, all the time. Weather is always changing. It's a chaotic kind of science. So what happens now affects what happens 10 minutes from now. The forecast brought us to El Reno, Oklahoma.
On this particular day in El Reno, the calm before the storm did not last long.
Every type of ingredient for storm development was not only present, it was off the charts. Winds at the surface are coming from this direction, winds a little bit higher are coming from this direction, and then winds really high in the atmosphere are the other way. Well, that induces spin. The National Weather Service put out a particular dangerous situation watch.
Residents should prepare their storm shelters for a worst-case scenario.
When you hear that, you know that they mean business. It was scary. A lot of my fellow chasers were literally fearful of chasing that day. We all had this yucky feeling in our stomach that this would not end well.
At 5:35 p.m., sirens wail in the town of El Reno. An official tornado warning is in effect.
A tornado warning gives some key information to people. It tells you where the storm is, its motion, and ideally will tell you the towns and even timing of when the tornado is expected to hit.
The average amount of time between a tornado warning and the arrival of a storm is just 13 minutes. Despite their gut feeling, the chasers head out to film the storm.
When the driving starts, then it becomes about staying in touch with your friends that are also chasing the same storm cells.
George, you copy? How you doing back there?
I'm grabbing the radio. Hey, do you have a visual on this? It's rain wrapped, we can't see anything. So it's helpful to have other eyes on the ground. I'm looking to the west and I see what looks like almost a spaceship. It's got this beautiful formation to it, and I'm just thinking it's rain.
Then Jacqueline gets an update from one of her storm-chasing colleagues.
I remember George Karunis radioing us and saying, guys, tornado, I see a tornado.
It's rain wrapped!
Suddenly, Jacqueline draws a chilling conclusion.
Oh my God, that's not rain. That is the tornado. That is a massive wedge tornado moving toward our direction.
They quickly jump out to film the epic tornado. It's already 2 miles at its base, 10 times the width of an average tornado.
A tornado can become so wide simply because it's the energy and fuel associated with these storms. The fuel was off the charts with the Reno tornado. It was able to tap the intense moisture and heat and fuel required to generate this massive tornado within this parent thunderstorm. So you have these sucking winds coming in from miles around and feeding this thing, and it just widens with time and becomes the most fearsome looking thing.
A wedge is as wide as it is tall. And those are kind of the tornadoes that you hope to get because they're just massive and they're beautiful to photograph. This wasn't beautiful. This was terrifying. This was a wedge that went down in history as the biggest ever. And there is nothing beautiful, there is nothing fascinating about it anymore. It's really run for your life.
They expect the storm to move northeast, the typical direction for tornadoes. But the massive wedge lunges south, catching the chasers off guard.
The nature of the winds at low levels that feed a tornado, they're undulating and changing, and it just changes the path, potentially in a significant way that can impact you.
It's getting really, really big out here. All storm chasers, you copy?
Jacqueline puts a warning call out to her colleagues.
This is Jacqueline. Look, you have to get out of here now. I repeat, get out now. Do you copy?
Nothing.
Radio silence. The leading edge of the tornado closes in on them.
I've never seen anything that big. And I have this horrible feeling that I'm not gonna get out. I'm not gonna make it out of here.
A 2-mile wide tornado barrels down on meteorologist Jacqueline Whittle and her storm tracking team. The tornado was hidden from view behind a rain curtain and catches the storm chasers by surprise.
We didn't know at first what we were looking at. It looked like a big wall of rain. So there was no reason to panic until there was.
It's a rain-wrapped tornado!
We hit the gas pedal.
Come on, go, 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 go!
Everybody just realized, holy that's the tornado. That is the actual tornado. We gotta go.
Come on, let's get out of here.
And everybody tried to beeline down Highway 81 at the same time.
Let's go!
Come on!
The tornado continues to grow. It's now 2.5 miles wide, wider than Manhattan, and speeding along at 40 miles an hour. It closes in on them.
Move!
But there's nowhere to go.
So now we have hundreds of locals actually trying to get out of the way, and you've got hundreds of chasers. You can't go anywhere. It's a traffic jam. It's the worst case scenario that you could ever imagine when trying to flee a tornado.
Oh.
The tornado was coming closer, and I can remember it sucking in the air around us. Literally, debris is blowing as the tornado's sucking it up, and that's a bad sign. We're now dead stop. Nobody's going anywhere. It actually just sat like that for several minutes, which seemed like forever to me, because I'm just looking back. We gotta go. There's nowhere to go. And I can see this dark cloud getting closer and closer. I'm thinking at this point, that's it. We're done. We're going to die.
The tornado continues to grow in size and ferocity with the winds upward of 250 miles per hour.
With 250-mile-per-hour winds, you can level a house. You can lift cars. Railway cars can be blown over, and it's just a whole level of severity that's almost unheard of on Earth.
The tornado continues to drop south directly behind the storm chasers. They're too close.
We got to get off this road. And we're not moving very fast.
Jacqueline has a life and death decision to make. Continue south and try to outrun the tornado, or try to escape in another direction.
If we turn too quickly, we might still be in the path of the tornado. I want to get off this highway because I'm terrified that this storm is going to cross the highway.
They come to a crossroads. Left or right. They have seconds to decide. The pathway of the tornado is anyone's guess.
So we finally get to that crucial left-hand turn.
Jacqueline, where are we going?
Left, go left!
And we actually head east.
It's the right decision.
We know now that we're out of the path of the tornado. We see it now north of us. I remember just feeling a sigh of relief that we made it. But I also knew that probably some didn't. And that was an awful feeling.
At a roadside diner, news of the tornado trickles in.
We have breaking news out of El Reno, Oklahoma tonight. Residents there are reeling after a devastating tornado ripped through the town.
Several vehicles have been caught in the storm's erratic trajectory. But not everyone made it out of the El Reno tornado alive.
Everybody at one point had to make a choice whether they're going to stay, go north, go south, or turn off on one of these small country roads. And a few of our colleagues turned a little too early. And unfortunately, the outer bands of the tornado killed 3 chasers that day.
The tornado killed 8 people, including 4 storm chasers.
And these were amazing scientists.
Another 151 people suffered injuries.
They were there studying, and they had done it for years, and that storm was different. That storm acted in a way that no other tornado acted historically. It sped up, it got bigger, it crossed the highway, it changed directions. It did everything that a tornado normally wouldn't do. And that could have been us.
The scientists killed at El Reno were collecting data to better understand tornadoes and ultimately save lives, even though it meant putting themselves at risk. The El Reno tornado claimed 8 lives and injured more than 150 people. 2.6 miles across, it was the widest tornado in recorded history. Unique in its size, ferocity, and trajectory.
We were just at the right place at the right time. But if we were literally half a mile north on that road, I wouldn't be talking right now.
At what point does a tornado become dangerous? We have dangerous tornadoes that generally have winds of, say, 200 kilometers per hour. There was a professor from Chicago, Dr. Fujita, that came up with the Fujita scale many, many moons ago. And it's correlated what we know engineering-wise about how structures are built in relation to wind strength. And it does a rough correlation between wind intensity and damage. If you have a strong and violent tornado, you're basically correlating the strongest wind speeds with the most violent damage with homes or structures. There's been a lot of research on this as well. There's the Three Little Pigs project out of the University of Western Ontario. And Dr. Greg Kopp and so on and his affiliates have a giant wind tunnel there that propel wind against objects. And they will impale 2x4s or struts or whatever, trusses through brick walls and so on. And it really helps us with the science of building safety up and against tornadoes. The funny thing about the Fujita scale, or enhanced Fujita scale, is the tornado really has to have targets to hit in order to classify it. You really could have the most intense tornado in the history of mankind out in the middle of a field, churning away, and it's not doing anything except a little bit of damage to the corn stalks. But we can't rate it as an EF5 because there's no other damage indicated.
Tornadoes.
Here comes the tornado.
They twist. They turn. They kill. These are the stories from people who work in extreme weather.
We just lost a big window.
It was just like a bomb went off.
And nobody is coming to save you.
And the storms they'll never forget.
Wham! Crack! Bang! Bang! Bang!
Holy we're going to die.
Plus, the how and why behind the world's worst weather.
Mother Nature is one mother.
The state of Nebraska is no stranger to tornadoes. Located within the infamous Tornado Alley, Nebraska gets 57 tornadoes per year on average.
Tornadoes are something that we've been studying for a long time. They occur in what we call tornado belts, in a sense, areas where there's a predominance of tornadoes. Well, the scientists for predicting tornado formation is that you look for the conditions in the atmosphere where it is, first of all, very warm, enough moisture, and unstable in the sense that there is vertical motion happening.
Storm chaser and tornado tour guide George Karunas has been chasing tornadoes for over 20 years.
It is impossible for me to add up the number of days, weeks, months, miles that I have traveled. It's typical for me to live like a nomad, crisscrossing the Great Plains of the United States for 4 to 6 weeks every springtime. In all of my years of storm chasing, I've seen a lot of flying debris, things being thrown through the air by tornadoes, but this was a close call.
As a tornado chasing tour guide, George Karunas gives clients an up-close and personal view of these destructive weather monsters. Each spring, he spends 2 weeks at a time chasing tornadoes, with clients along for the extreme ride.
I'm gonna jump out and get a shot of this.
Every spring, I disappear and head to Oklahoma, Kansas, Texas, Nebraska, and literally just go where the wind takes me. We have to try and forecast where the storms are going to be, and then drive to maneuver to get into position to where we think the storms are going to form. If you're lucky, a storm will go up, you chase it, you try to navigate around the roads, and if you're really, really lucky, you'll see a tornado.
May 12, 2013. It's Mother's Day. George and his clients get ready for what they hope will be an epic storm-chasing day.
Thank you. It's the early morning. We're putting our weather forecast together. We realize that there's potential for some storms later in the day. I've gathered together all the guests from the tornado tour, and I'm ready to give them a briefing. But it's Mother's Day. What do you have to do on Mother's Day? Call Mom. So I'm on the phone with my mother.
I know, Mom.
The conversation was a typical Mother's Day conversation. Hey, how you doing? Everything is good? But then she said something that was a little unusual. She said that she was particularly concerned for my safety today.
I know, Mom. It's not my first rodeo.
So I thought it was weird that she said that.
Little did George know, but his mother's instinct about Mother Nature may have been correct.
So I hang up the phone with my mom. We do our weather briefing, let everyone know what's going on for the day, and then we pile into the vans and head towards our target area, which happens to be in south central Nebraska this particular day.
Nebraska is a huge trigger for tornadoes due to its dry lines, a separation of moist and dry air. When these two fronts collide, air rises and storms develop.
Chasing tornadoes is all about gambling your knowledge versus the curveballs that Mother Nature is going to throw you. So we do a very sophisticated analysis of all the computer weather models. We look at satellite data, we look at radar data, and we develop a target area. And as the day progresses, the weather information gets better and better. So we're able to narrow our target down as the day goes on. The computer models are telling us that there is a potential for supercell thunderstorms, that is these giant rotating storms, the ones that are most likely to produce tornadoes.
When you have certain kinds of events in the atmosphere and there's, say, a cold front coming through or a warm front, you'll create, let's say, convective cells of storms here and here and here and here, what we call a supercell. It will be much more intense, more super. Unfortunately, that means more devastating, usually, than an ordinary cell.
We get people join us on these chases from all over the world. Folks from Canada, the US, all over England and Europe, people from Australia and New Zealand, weather enthusiasts, the kind of people that don't run inside when there's thunder and lightning. We have a sophisticated setup. I'm driving. We have the owner of the tour company, who is also the navigator, in the passenger seat, and then all of the guests are in the back. And we've got cameras set up that are facing back. I've got cameras on the dashboard, because we want to capture every minute of the chase. Late in the afternoon, we have a target storm that goes up in south central Nebraska. And we're able to get in front of it. And we're looking basically down the throat of this supercell. And it is a dark mass along the horizon. You can see a sharp edge, and then it's just nothing but black underneath. This is what we call an HP supercell, a high precipitation, meaning there's a lot of rain coming out of it, and that can make it extra dangerous. If there's a tornado embedded in that rain, you could be hit by it and not even see it coming. The fact that this storm was a high precipitation type really upped the danger level. So I really wanted to make sure that I gave this storm a wide berth.
As George and his guests head into the storm, the sky becomes black. It looks mean. A few miles away, they spot a tornado in the distance.
Is that the tornado there?
That is it.
Their clients in the back seat are thrilled. This is what they came for. The team decides they've got to pick up the pace to get ahead of the storm.
We were getting into a tricky situation. I was on a dirt road with this monster storm bearing down on us that is about to dump a ton of rain. It had just been issued with a tornado warning, and I couldn't tell if there was a tornado wrapped up in all that rain. I'm there to chase the storms and bring these paying customers to come and see them as well. But the number one priority is keeping everyone safe. We see it produce a small tornado on the horizon, and it's starting to accelerate. This storm is getting closer and closer to us. And we know that the road that we're on, this dirt road, is probably going to turn into mud in a matter of minutes.
It's coming right at us right now. We're gonna need to turn around.
We turn the van around and start blasting out of there. And then things get really hairy.
Located within the infamous Tornado Alley, the state of Nebraska gets an average of 57 tornadoes per year. May 12, 2013. A full-on tornado is forming, and tornado tour guide George Karunas has just entered the supercell storm, taking his passengers along for what may be a dangerous ride.
At this point, the storm is probably moving about 40 miles an hour, so I have to really hit the gas to try and stay ahead of it because we know we're going to get engulfed by the heaviest rain and hail. Being in front or in the path of a tornado is extremely dangerous. If you see a tornado and it's not moving left and it's not moving right, it just looks like it's getting bigger, guess what? It's coming straight for you. The biggest problem with tornado chasing is the unknown. You can try and predict where this tornado is going to go, but they don't always go where you think they're gonna go, and the roads don't always cooperate. One of the most dangerous part about chasing a storm that can produce a tornado is not the tornado that you can see. It's the tornado that you can't see because it's either wrapped in rain or it's forming right on top of you. And that's exactly what happened this day.
And what George couldn't see, all of a sudden reared its ugly head.
And then out the side to our south, somebody spots a tornado touching down very close to us in the field. I can't see it because I'm driving. And here's the thing about tornadoes. Tornado is a rotating column of wind, not necessarily cloud. So you could have a swirling mass of debris that doesn't look like much, but it's a tornado. That's exactly what happened on this day in Nebraska. We see to the south the tornado. I'm driving east. We know the storm is moving northeast. That puts that tornado on a perfect trajectory to intercept us. The chaser has become the chased.
Look at that. Oh man, it's coming in quick.
Do we try to outrun the tornado? Do I try to put on the brakes and let the tornado pass? You have seconds to make really important decisions, especially because you've got a van full of people who are in your hands and you're responsible.
We need to get out of here. We gotta go.
We gotta get out of here, man. Let's go.
Every minute you're making dozens of very important decisions that could be life or death.
Make sure you got your seatbelts on right now.
And at this point, all we can do is try to outrun it. My biggest concern was being rolled over by these winds. I could feel the wind pushing the side of the van, and I'm fighting it as hard as I can. Imagine driving a barn down the road. That's what it's like. with one of these big vans.
But George's van isn't the only thing that these forceful winds may roll over.
And it just so happens that we're driving past an irrigation system. This is equipment that farmers use to water their crops. These irrigation pivots, they're basically a long, what looks like a piece of scaffolding with wheels that a farmer will set up in the middle of their field, and then it rotates around. If you've ever been flying over the central US and you look down out of the airplane and you see those circles for crops, that shows you where they've been using these irrigation circle equipment. One of these is parked parallel to the road, and I'm trying to get ahead of this storm now.
We just gotta move.
I'm holding the steering wheel with all of my strength.
Keep going, keep going, keep going, keep going, keep going.
I'm just bracing against the wind, flooring the gas. The tornado now starts to push this piece of farm equipment over.
Oh! You all right?
The end piece could have easily gone through the windshield and into any one of us. Scary stuff.
Everyone okay?
What did you hit?
For that to be blown over the way it was, I can't imagine how strong the winds were. I'm surprised the van didn't roll. The guests in the back, they were fully aware that it was a close call. When you have farm equipment starting to come through your windshield, that's a pretty good indicator that you're in the wrong place. When the dust finally settled and we were able to stop, we got out to do a damage assessment to see how bad this was. It was shocking to see how little damage there was. I was expecting the entire side of the van to be just completely destroyed and demolished. There was very little damage at all, just a broken mirror and a smashed windshield.
Close one, eh? Yeah.
I'm not proud of what happened that day. It was a clear example of being in the wrong place, and we probably should have evacuated out of there much earlier than we did. But it's hard to tell. You can do everything right and still end up in the wrong place. Everyone in that car will remember that day.
Tornadoes are very destructive because they're very intense winds over a relatively small spatial scale, but the wind speeds themselves within a tornado are really horrific, so they can literally blow a building apart.
I know, Mom.
Of course, my mother had warned me earlier in the day that she was particularly worried about my safety. Well, later that evening, that video ended up airing all over the world on the evening news. Mom got to see firsthand how right she really was. Over the years with all of my adventures, I have given my mother a lot of gray hairs. This particular day, she got a few extra. In all of my years of storm chasing, I've seen a lot of flying debris, things being thrown through the air by tornadoes, but this was a close call. It wouldn't have taken much. If I was driving maybe a little bit faster, that farm equipment would have maybe not hit the windshield, maybe come through the side window and taken out one of the paying customers. So that absolutely was the day that weather changed my life.
Tornado winds wreak havoc on everything in their paths as they pick up speed.
Can you hear it?
Almost nothing stands in their way. Potentially more destructive is the tornado's spiraling vortex as it reaches the ground. Anything can be ripped apart or thrown in the air, creating a deadly field of debris.
Tornadoes need, first of all, heat. They have to have the energy. They need moisture. And they need the right combination of the wind, what we call the wind shear. The change in wind as you go from the surface up into the atmosphere, such that it can cause that rotating force.
While most people are seeking shelter from the vortex, storm chaser Tim Baker is trying to get as close to the vortex as possible.
I don't have any noble reason why I chase tornadoes. I mean, I'd like to use my stuff to help for safety and maybe help protect lives, but the reality is I want the adrenaline rush.
Tornado's on the ground! The tornado's on the ground!
I don't want to just see the tornado from a half a mile away. I want to touch the edge of that thing.
It's a rain-wrapped tornado!
But on this particular day, I was trapped in the path of it with no escape. When you're stuck in a tornado, you're done. I was just waiting to die.
Tim Baker, better known as Tornado Tim, has been chasing storms for over 20 years.
I like to go by the name Tornado Tim because I like chasing tornadoes. That's kind of my passion in life.
For more than 2 decades, Tornado Tim has played cat and mouse with Mother Nature.
Tornado's coming! Tornado's coming!
Outrunning the twists and turns of literally hundreds of tornadoes. But on May 13, 2009, all that came to a dead end. With a population of less than 20,000, Kirksville is a small town in the northwest of Tornado Alley. Over 2,000 tornadoes have torn through Missouri since 1950, and Kirksville and surrounding area have been hit dozens of times.
Tornadoes are something that we've been studying for a long time. They occur in what we call tornado belts, areas where there's a predominance of tornadoes.
Tim begins to check his weather maps and models.
In May of 2009, I was already in Kansas. There was just a slight chance of severe storms the day before, and nothing really happened, so I looked at the weather maps to see where the front has moved, see where the low has moved, see where the jet stream's positioned, because they never stay exactly as the predictions were. So I'm trying to figure out exactly how far north, south, east, west I need to adjust to. You got to be fairly accurate because your first predictions are going to get you in a region where you don't want to be more than 60 miles off target. Because you've got to travel distance when the storms start to fire, and then when the tornado starts to form, you got to be pretty close or it's going to happen and be gone and you won't be there. I chase in the same areas all the time, and I know those roads like the back of my hand. But on this particular day, I was chasing in an area of Missouri I'd never been in before, and that's when things really changed. There was a lot of country, farmish type roads, a lot of turning in the roads that I wasn't familiar with. So this was very unfamiliar territory.
Although he may have been in unfamiliar territory, this did not diminish Tim's ego, as he began to play tag with Mother Nature, a game he normally wins.
Oh yeah, we've got a tornado forming right here, baby.
Today was proving an exceptional day for tornado chasing.
That first tornado that day was great because I was able to watch the tornado come at me.
Very violent tornado.
And in fact, I start to see branches and debris falling on top of my car from that first tornado because I was so close.
Debris. We have debris.
I waited to the last second, and I floored it. I mean, you can hear my tires squeal from my car as I'm getting away from it. And I'm playing tag with this first one. Instead of just sitting at a distance and watching it move, I go in and I tag it. I touch the outer fields of the tornado winds. and then I punch away, get away from it, and then I wait for it to catch up to me again, and I come in and I touch the outer edge of it. And experience that and then get away from it. There's nothing like it. Seeing a tornado is one thing, but I want to experience it, and I'm experiencing that tornado. I mean, let's face it, I am Tornado Tim. So playing with a tornado is part of me. It's part of my identity.
Tim may know who he is. Unfortunately, he doesn't know where he is.
I'd never been in that area, so I didn't know what to expect. It's very windy and it's hilly. So the winding roads, the trees, was making it difficult for me to know exactly where I was in the position of the direction of the tornado. I couldn't tell sometimes if I was going north, south, east, or west. So it was making that really complicated.
The last thing anybody wants when they are in the path of a killer tornado is to not know their surroundings in order to plan an escape route.
Tornado is tailing me.
I came into Kirksville and I could see that tornado heading straight for this subdivision. The lights go out. There's power flashes. You see the tornado ripping up the power poles. So like any time you get overconfident, you start to make decisions that you probably in a normal, logical sense wouldn't make. I started to turn onto roads that I had never been on before to get directly in the path of a tornado. I can start to hear the wind scream. I realize, all right, I've got to move now. So I start to move into the subdivision. And I thought, I'm going to turn right, drop south of this tornado, and watch it go by me. So I get there, I turn right. And it's a dead end. So the first time in my life, I am trapped in the path of a tornado. And I'm watching it rip stuff apart. I was just waiting to die.
Missouri ranks as one of the top 10 states struck by tornadoes. And May 13, 2009 is no exception. Kirksville, Missouri. Tornado winds are raging at 200 miles per hour. Destruction is everywhere. And storm chaser Tornado Tim Baker is stuck on a dead-end street.
So the first time in my life, I am trapped in the path of a tornado. And I'm watching it rip stuff apart. I thought a million things. I'm thinking, I'm on a dead-end road and I will die here. How stupid was I to do this? My family's gonna have to pick up my body in Kirksville, Missouri, and they don't even know where it is on the map. All these things are just floating through your head. Tornado Tim dies by being killed by a tornado. I'm feeling stupid. And I'm watching that thing come in. I realize the debris from those houses is going to be thrown into my car.
With nowhere to go, Tim braces for the 135-mile-per-hour tornado and the debris that's flying through the air.
When you hear a warning of a tornado, don't wait for the first warning and think, well, what should I do? What you should probably have is a safe place. It could be part of your basement, something that allows you to get in a place where you're not going to be blown apart.
So I've got my camera faced right outside of the front window, and you just start to see little debris, bigger debris, starting to throw it around. And I'm looking out my window, and I see this spinning column of boards and 2x4s and plywood floating, coming right at me. It starts to get really close, and then the debris gets larger. I see things now starting to slam into my car and then fly over it that are bigger than my car. Entire sheets of plywood, siding, nails, glass, metal, everything is slamming into my car. The car's being rocked. You can just hear the banging happening to my car. All along, I was certain I was going to be picked up, thrown into a tree, and bent around like a pretzel and killed. I was just waiting to die. I actually started uttering, God, I'm really sorry, and I'm in your hands.
I'm in your hands, Luke. I'm in your hands.
The tornado was probably moving at 35 to 40 miles an hour, and the wind speeds within the tornado were probably 110 to 135 miles an hour. At that point, I pretty much said Mother Nature wins. When you're stuck in a tornado, you're helpless. You're done. Nothing you can do.
The tornado and the debris pass through. And miraculously, Tornado Tim survives.
You know, you asked me what I was thinking when I was sitting in the car and the debris pounding in the car. What goes through your mind as a tornado chaser who's highly experienced and studied severe weather and tornadoes, I'm thinking of all the ways people die in a tornado. All that's going through my mind. I know all the ways I'm potentially about to die.
Subdivision took a direct hit. Right next to me.
The sad thing is people get killed, property's destroyed, people lose a lot of their life savings. 2 people had died from that tornado. There was over a dozen injuries in the town. So it has a negative impact on the town that way, and certainly a lot of people suffer. The next storm chase season wasn't the same after that. There was something in the back of my mind that wasn't letting me get as close. In fact, it was early on the next spring, I was right spot on to get a tornado. I was going to be right on the edge of that thing. And I got to the outer bands, and there was a lot of rain, and I stopped. And I thought, I don't want to be trapped like Kirksville again. I'm less likely to turn on an unknown road if I can at least check the maps first. I still chase today and will be chasing until the day I die.
Tornado winds cause catastrophic damage. They demolish any obstacle in their path. They create spinning fields of killer debris. And sometimes they literally suck you into the eye of the storm.
The wind fields around tornadoes are a very curious beast. They are all sucking in towards the tornado, just on the edge of the updraft, which is very strong within these violent thunderstorms. There really is a sucking motion taking debris skyward. The strongest tornadoes have such force behind them, they can actually peel pavement off highways.
Veteran storm chasers and husband and wife team Jeff and Kathy Piotrowski are known for capturing some of the greatest tornado footage in their industry. This power couple's adrenaline not only drives their passion, but drives them into the eye of the storm.
I've been chasing storms for almost 40 years now. Tornadoes, to me, is an extraordinary event for Mother Nature to release its fury and watch it all go from clear skies to the most violent storm on planet is absolutely amazing. This one day, it was the largest, biggest, widest tornado we filmed in 40 years. I knew it was something special and something different that I had never witnessed before. If it gets you and you get sucked in, you're in trouble. You're in big trouble.
Jeff and Kathy are no strangers to tornadoes. Living in Oklahoma, they are all too familiar with Tornado Alley.
Tornado Alley is in the central part of the U.S., where we have to have those perfect ingredients to come together every spring, and that is the Gulf of Mexico sends moisture northward into the Central Plains. We have a strong jet stream coming in from California as the upper winds come out of the southwest, and it brings the dry air out of the desert, out of Arizona to Mexico, and that dry air, hot air will hit the moisture, and it causes thunderstorms to erupt. And if the jet stream's aloft and we got low pressure in the Rockies, then you create a lot of wind shear in the atmosphere, and when that happens, you get the storms to rotate. Before this particular tornado, the average tornado has a certain size and a certain speed. A lot of times they move to the northeast at like 25 miles an hour, and they behave a certain way based on the conditions for that day. But on this particular day, all those rules went out the window, and it did things that we've never seen before. Reno is just west of Oklahoma City, about 30 miles on I-40.
Yeah.
So the morning of May 31st, we were looking at the data that we knew there was a risk out, a moderate risk.
There it is, yeah. Okay.
And we knew Oklahoma City area was going to be under the gun for significant weather and tornadoes. That morning, we looked at the data, and I said, hey, we're going to go to Reno. That's kind of going to be ground zero area of where something bad was going to happen. So we knew that. So we left Tulsa around 10 o'clock in the morning. We drive to Oklahoma City. On our way down, we're watching the radar, we're watching satellite, and there's already storms developing in southeast Kansas along the draw line in the front. And we see these things coming together and during the course of the day.
It's getting really ominous looking. The horizon's getting darker and darker. There's the brightness to the west of the dry line, and the clouds are forming from the north to the south also.
So we set up on the northwest side of El Reno, and the storms are developing about 25 miles west of El Reno. There are thunderstorms growing in air mass, kind of like you see on a spring day. You see these big, huge cumulus clouds developing. And I'm watching radar, and I'm watching the storm. And the radar image just gets better, worse by worse every minute it updates. Every couple minutes we get a new radar image. And I've got hail forming.
Hail forms in storms that produce tornadoes, again, because of that correlation of wind shear and the heat and energy. The shear keeps the storm going. It propels these storms to last an hour, maybe even 2 hours. Hail needs time in the atmosphere to grow. That is why these big tornado producers often produce large hail as well. The hail is produced in the updraft portion of the storm, and it is basically buoyed aloft in this strong updraft in order to create the largest hailstorm.
I can see torrential rain, and the worst sign is the storm is already starting to show the signs. It's starting to rotate and spin, and I've got rotating curtains, which are a precursor before the tornado that the storm is rotating. So it's like a shower curtain in the bathroom. If you pull the curtain around, the rain is just following that wind, and as the storm rotates, the rain follows that rotating curtain. And so I see that on the radar. I see a hook starting to form, and at that point, I say it's time. We're going after the storm. So it's raining, there's hail, and there's wind, and the storm's getting darker and darker, and it's looking more ominous by the second.
When we're approaching the El Reno storm, the first thing I see is a vortice, and I don't see just one, I see multiple vortices coming down. The vortices are tornadoes. They're the tornadoes that are touching the ground, but they're coming back up, and then another one will come down, and it'll go back up, and then they were just dancing around one another before they formed the main event, the main tornado. I'm knowing that it's going to be a very violent storm.
Almost half of Oklahoma tornadoes occur in May. And May 31st, 2013 will go down in history when the widest tornado ever recorded reared its ugly head in the city of El Reno. Storm chasers Jeff and Kathy Piotrowski are entering the mouth of the beast.
The storm's getting darker and darker, and it's looking more ominous by the second. We're heading west on I-40, west of El Reno, and the storm is severe. A severe thunderstorm warning has been issued by the Weather Service.
I knew it was going to be very dangerous, something I was going to have to be very aware of. I didn't have time to be frightened. I had to be really cognizant, very aware of what was going on so I could keep us both safe.
It's not my first rodeo. I mean, after you film about 900 of these, you get a sense of what's going to happen before it happens. But this one had a few tricks up its sleeve.
And for Jeff and Kathy, this tornado was going to use every twisted trick in the book.
Originally, when the storm developed, we were about 20 to 30 miles east of it. But then at the time the tornado was forming, it was only about a quarter mile away from the tornado. Then we went back to the east to get ready for the intercept as the tornado was approaching El Reno. First of all, the storm structure was really amazing. And also the inflow into the tornado, the storm itself, was sustained at 50, gusting to 80 miles an hour. Way in advance of the tornado itself, the inflow was like a hurricane of air rushing into the bottom of the storm. So that in itself caught my attention. Then what caught my attention even more, as the tornadic storm was moving southeast, and as Kathy said, we'd have multiple tornadoes dance around each other. And generally we have multiple tornadoes, not all the time, but sometimes they'll join into one large tornado. And I saw one concentric tornado, it slowed down, and I literally watched it go from southwest to south of me, and it stopped, and it got wider and wider and wider in front of us. And then all of a sudden, it just goes boom, and starts taking off the east. We turn east, it's out Kathy's window, she's watching the tornado, I'm watching the map, and it's a race is on now to stay in front of the tornado, and this tornado is accelerating. It's growing both in width and intensity. And it also starts having other tornadoes start forming ahead of it, tracking, pulling back into this main tornado like a conveyor belt.
The inflow of air pulling back into the main tornado is not the only thing it's going to pull in.
The El Reno tornado was complicated in a lot of different ways. You'd like to be just ahead of the tornado. Like if the tornado's moving northeast, I like to be in front of it, driving north, and then back east, and then north and east, and that's what I did on El Reno day. That's what kept us safe. So the key thing on staying safe and out of its path of the tornado is we saw it growing in its width and its forward speed. They moved southeast for about 3 to 4 miles. Then the tornado slowed way down. It got much larger. Tornado moved east for about 3 miles, and then it curved and it got really wide and started moving northeast. And then the last 3 or 4 miles, it was really large, and then it shot due north. So it made almost a complete U over about a 10-mile path. And when it made that hook, that hard beam to the left and accelerated, that's when it caught a lot of people off guard.
Generally, you know, large tornadoes move slowly and they're anchored in. However, with the El Reno tornado, there were multiple vortices. There wasn't just that one large tornado. There were several tornadoes going on at the same time under this one mesocyclone.
Jeff makes a life and death decision to hit the gas. But will that be enough to avoid being hit himself?
Rain curtains were rotating around and hiding the monster tornado inside. And you knew something bad was back there. And I remember having the accelerator all the way to the floor, maybe doing 60, 70 miles an hour. And I could feel the front of the truck in a 100-mile headwind. I could feel the front of the truck doing this. I could literally feel it coming off the ground.
The chase vehicle gets kind of a lightness to it. You can just feel it.
The tornado is catching us!
And she said a dozen times, we're gonna get sucked into it, we're gonna get sucked into it, we're gonna get sucked into it.
Ah.
I knew Jeff was giving it all he could.
Hold on!
I was scared to death.
Oh my God, it's on us!
There was about a 5 or 10 second period of time when I looked up with the storm and I saw this huge mass coming, and the inflow was so enormous, it felt like any second the entire vehicle was going to go airborne and I was going to get shot up to outer space. So yeah, it was scary. It was really scary.
If a car gets sucked into a tornado, you're going to die.
If it gets you and you get sucked in or you get into that tornado wall of winds, you're in trouble. You're in big trouble. What I did over the next minute or two was going to determine whether we survived or we got chewed up and hit by this big tornado. It was literally down to seconds. And I understood that threat as it was happening, but I didn't like the feeling.
I just felt confident that Jeff was going to pull us out of this.
I think we need to go north.
He makes good decisions continuously when we're out storm chasing, and so I felt confident we were going to make it out.
My sensory, every piece of information 360 degrees around me tells me what the next move I need to make in order to stay alive. You question your mortality when you have this huge, big killer tornadoes that are bearing down on you, and you know horrible things are happening. So you have split seconds to make a decision, am I gonna survive this?
The El Reno tornado was 2.6 miles wide. The moment that I'm looking up through the front windshield and I can see the debris going over, I'm thinking to myself, I may not get out of this one.
So as we're driving away from the El Reno tornado, the steering wheel is actually vibrating. I could feel the wheel vibrating as I'm driving. It's from the ground rumbling. So I've got the front of the truck being picked up and the wheels vibrating, so you know what's behind me is really bad. When the tornado made a hard left turn and went up to I-40, we found ourselves at the I-40 on-ramp, and we, at that point, decided to head east into Oklahoma City.
Keep going, keep going, keep going!
We drove in the city, we were dealing with flash flooding, heavy rain, high winds, but it was on a downhill hillside as far as intensity goes of the overall storm. It weakened. At that point, that was the end of that cycle of that large tornado.
I remember when the El Reno tornado dissipated, just watching this massive wedge as it went to the north, and then as it dissipated, it just looked like it disappeared.
The El Reno tornado was the second widest tornado on record. It was about 2.6 miles wide. It was just a beast beyond words. The lift associated with the updraft that generated the tornado was just incredible. So you have these sucking winds coming in from miles around and feeding this thing, and it just widens with time and becomes the most fearsome looking thing.
There were a number of people killed and injured during the Reno tornado. Several chasers were killed. And knowing those people really hit us hard, and the community, weather community hard as well.
For me, I'll never forget the El Reno tornado because of the other storm chasers that lost their lives. It just shows me how fragile life can be, and we were really close to something major disastrous happening. And I think of how blessed we are, how fortunate we are that we didn't get caught in this major tornado.
It was a day to remember like no other day, that we barely survived. That's the weather event I will never forget.
Twisters, whirlwinds, funnels. Whatever the name, tornadoes are one of nature's most violent storms.
The tornado hit me, lifted me, tumbled me over.
In mere minutes, they can demolish homes,
I prepared to die.
level entire towns,
It looked like a nuclear weapon had gone off.
and destroy people's lives.
I knew by looking at my leg wasn't going to be able to be saved.
Scientists are now mining the tornadoes for data, revealing surprising insights about the total impact of their violent, unpredictable nature.
Today, the target is 10 to 20 minutes of lead time on a tornado warning.
Hurricanes, tsunamis, earthquakes.
This was the deadliest tornado on record.
The impact can be devastating.
God completely wiped it off the map.
We step inside the disaster
We were running for our lives.
It hits like a freight train.
and unravel the unexpected and sometimes jaw-dropping total impact.
Believe it or not, some good can come from these monster storms.
It's a beautiful Sunday afternoon. At Joplin High School, the class of 2011 has just finished their graduation ceremony. It's an exciting day filled with anticipation and hope for the future.
I go to Joplin almost every year to photograph the high school graduation. It was a sunny day. Blue skies, pretty clouds.
Joplin, Missouri is a small city along the classic Route 66.
It's your normal Midwestern town. We lived in a small subdivision out there, just far enough away from town, but it was still a very tight-knit community.
With graduation over, Stacy wraps up her day and gets ready to head home.
We photographed the graduation, and I remember packing up all our equipment. So I walked out the front door, and a gentleman opened the door and said, "Hey, do you need help?" And I'm like, "No." And he said, "Wow, it's really humid today. I think we're gonna get like a storm or something." And I was like, "Yeah, it's hot."
As the afternoon draws to a close, a tornado alert siren rings out for Jasper County and Joplin. Situated in the heart of Tornado Alley, these warnings happen often, and 75% are false alarms. Most residents ignore the warning and continue on with their day.
I'm thinking this is sort of typical. We see stuff like this. I'm not going to panic.
Little do they know that this is about to become a historic twister. Dusty is in the midst of work prepping for surgery.
We had scheduled to perform a hip incision and drainage for an infection the patient had gotten in the hip. It's a routine surgery as far as the technicality, but it is an emergency that you have to get to pretty quickly, or the patient will continue to get sick and become toxic or septic.
With her radio off, Stacy begins to drive home. She doesn't hear the tornado warning or the sirens.
I live in Kansas City, Missouri, and it is about 200 miles to Joplin. Knowing I had a 2-hour drive, I stopped at the gas station to get a drink. The clerk was listening to the radio, and he told me that there was weather coming into Joplin. I kind of thought, oh, well, I'm going out of town. It's not going to affect me.
But before Stacy can leave, a man convinces her to wait the storm out in the gas station, just to be safe. Dusty hears the first indication that something is amiss over the hospital's loudspeaker.
We heard code gray right as the patient went to sleep. It was just a code for the hospital to notify everyone in the hospital overhead that there was a severe weather threat in the area. Oh, I wasn't worried at all. Those happen all the time. Anytime there's a big thunderstorm or something, they call it or the sirens go off in town. So not that it's anybody's crying wolf, but it's not something you get excited about. I'd ask the anesthesiologist, is it okay if we continue? Because even though I'm doing the surgery, they're kind of in charge of things as far as keeping the patient safe. And she said, look, this is an emergent surgery and we have to do it, so let's just do it.
Outside, the skies darken and the wind picks up.
And I thought, well, you know, if there's going to be a tornado, I want to take pictures of the tornado. So I grabbed my camera, grabbed an SD card, made sure my battery was good, grabbed my car keys, and I ran into the store because by then it was completely dark. I really didn't anticipate it being something so big. You know, I just thought, wow, it would be great to get pictures of a tornado. You know, not many people get to do that.
Although tornadoes are common in the Midwest, a unique set of conditions are required for them to form.
Like you can see little huge clouds going around.
Look at that!
So the key to how a thunderstorm develops a tornado is the updraft. Usually the downdraft from the storm wrapping around and causing it to converge into a small point. And that creates the tornado conditions at the ground.
There was about 18 people already in the gas station. I kind of stood by the windows because I wanted to get a shot of the tornado. The glass broke. We all rushed back to the back of the gas station. The wind was going so fast through the gas station that the walls were kind of shaking in, and we can feel cool air. Somebody said, hey, what's behind that door? He said, it's a cooler. So somebody opened the door. We ran into the cooler. We all kind of crouched down inside of there.
At the hospital, a shift in the air sets off a warning bell in Dusty's head.
I looked at my assistant, Chris, across the table, and I said, do you feel your ears popping? And he said, yeah. And I said, what the hell do you think that is? And he said, I don't know. I said, do you think it's the barometric pressure dropping outside? He said, it may be from the storm. And then it was 5 seconds later that the tornado hit the building and kind of all hell broke loose.
At the gas station, Stacy is huddled in the walk-in cooler, trying to stay calm.
So we're in the cooler, and you don't really hear the wind. You just hear the sounds, and like the tinging sounds of things falling onto the roof. So it's like ting, 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 ting the whole time. People screaming, people crying, and then we felt that first wave of the tornado go through. After the first wave went through, it felt like forever. We thought we were safe after the first one. We thought it was over with, and then the mother lode came through.
Oh my gosh!
As a tornado hits a hospital in Joplin, Missouri,
Listen to it!
Surgeon Dr. Dusty Smith and his team are plunged into darkness in the middle of an operation.
Everything just blew up at once. The walls blew up, the ceiling fell in, water started spewing from the walls where the pipes were. It just felt like a bomb detonated. I just said, okay, we'll continue. Luckily, the extra tech in the room had a flashlight to turn on and shine it in the wound so that we could keep working.
While Stacy and the others from the gas station huddle in the walk-in refrigerator, mayhem reigns outside their tiny metal safe house. The tornado rips apart the gas station. It sounds like a war zone outside the refrigerator.
It just felt like we were in this like sacred little box. It just felt like we were in this box with 20 people, hearing the wind, hearing the noise, you know, feeling the coolness, hearing the thunder, seeing lightning flashes. I screamed at the top of my lungs the whole time. I prepared to die.
This is an EF5 tornado, the highest rating on the enhanced Fujita scale and the most catastrophic.
With tornadoes, you obviously can't put an instrument in its way every time and hope to know how strong it was. So we actually rate tornadoes based on the damage that they cause. EF0, which is the weakest, starts at about 90 kilometers an hour, to the strongest at top end, an EF5, and that's 315 kilometers an hour and greater. EF4, all the walls are down. Basically, the house is destroyed. And if you get to EF5, all of that debris gets wiped right off the foundation. That's how strong the tornado is.
EF5s are rare. Only about 2% of known tornadoes in the US are EF5s. But like the tri-state tornado, when they hit, the impact is catastrophic.
The tri-state tornado occurred on March 18th, 1925. It traveled 350 kilometers, began in Missouri, traveled through Illinois, and ended up in Indiana, giving it the tri-state name. The width of this tornado was almost 2 kilometers, and it was moving at about 100 kilometers per hour. This was a long duration, long track tornado, lasted 3.5 hours. Being 1925, there wasn't anything to detect the tornado or get a warning out, so it arrived in those 3 states without warning. It's the deadliest known tornado in US history at 695 deaths and over 2,000 injuries. We weren't doing tornado rating back then, so it was later rated at F5 based on the damage that was caused. The damage from this tornado was about $16.5 million in 1925 dollars. This is $1.4 billion today.
Thad is working in the church when the tornado sirens sound. He and his colleagues take cover in the church basement.
I'm watching the weather, trying to figure out what's going on. I'm on the phone with my dad, and he's telling me it doesn't look very good over here. My mom and dad are on the west side of Joplin. So in the middle of my phone call, it goes dead. I'm listening to the sirens, I'm seeing the green skies, I've lost my dad's contact on the phone, I'm trying to call him back, I can't get a hold of him. So I'm getting concerned.
For Dr. Dusty and his team, the storm is about to become a life-threatening situation.
The tornado took off the back end of the hospital. Then the wind came inside and it blew the doors to the operating room open, which debris was flying in. And luckily, my physician's assistant dove at the doors and then pushed the doors closed. The patient's wide open. I was just trying to cover the wound the best I could while Chris was holding the doors closed. And I remember at some point, Chris looking at me saying, I don't think I can hold the doors any longer. And I said, brother, you got to.
Finally, after what feels like an eternity for Stacy, the refrigerator stops shaking. They can no longer hear the world outside crumbling.
There was like a calmness, and we all were like saying, I love you, man. You know, like, for me, I was quiet because I was just relieved. I just wanted to go. I wanted to get out of there. So we tried to go through the door that we came through, but there was so much debris in the gas station. We were stuck inside that cooler.
Things are no better in the operating room. With the surgery complete, Dusty and his team need to get the patient to the recovery unit, but it's easier said than done.
When we opened the doors of the room, there was a large pile of rubble and debris blocking the doorway. And when we entered the hallway, it looked like a movie scene, without a better way to say it. There were sparks flying. The smell of gas was incredible. I remember telling my PA, hey, do you smell the gas? And he said, yeah. I said, well, I hope these damn sparks don't ignite it. So we couldn't go get the gurney and just wheel it into the room. We had to go out there, crawl over the debris, grab it, and then crawl back over the debris into the room, put the patient on the table, and then carry the patient over the debris again and into the recovery room. It was just a surreal scene because they had moved all the patients from the emergency room into the recovery room because the emergency room got hit directly as well. It looked like a bad MASH episode in there. It was just complete chaos. Once we got done and got the patient to safety, then I clicked into father mode.
But with no cell phone service, Dusty can't reach his family. He has no idea if they're okay.
My physician's assistant and I went out back toward the parking lot, hoping to find our cars. It looked like a nuclear weapon had gone off outside. I looked at my physician's assistant. I said, I need to go home and check on my family.
Twisted metal litters the parking lot. The roads are blocked. His home is 13 kilometers away through the devastation. He does the only thing he can.
I started running.
"30 minutes after the first warning sirens, reports begin to emerge that an EF5 tornado has hit Joplin, Missouri. Survivors, now trapped inside the twisted remains of a walk-in cooler at a gas station, are desperate to find a way to escape.
We started smelling gas, and we thought the gas station's gonna blow up. We were stuck inside that cooler. We did see a little light above us, so we thought, okay, we gotta climb. And then a couple of the guys gathered like cases of beer, and we made a ladder out of beer. And one by one, we all just jumped out. I kind of stayed behind a little bit because I wanted to photograph everything in that cooler. I think I was the second to last person out. Once we dropped down into the grass, there was nothing left of that gas station at all, besides the cooler. It didn't look like a gas station anymore. It just looked like a bunch of rubble, you know? So we probably wouldn't have survived if we did not go into the cooler of the gas station.
As the gas station survivors come to grips with the destruction around them, Dusty takes off headlong into the devastation.
The streets were completely blocked. There was power lines down, parts of the street were just gone. There was no way you were gonna drive home or anything. I had to get home somehow. My home is about 8 miles from the hospital, so I took off running. I'm in decent shape, but I don't run. But at that time, I could have run whatever to get home, because that's all on my mind. And all I'm doing is thinking about my family.
After the tornado passes, a man runs into the church and tells Thad and his colleagues that Joplin has been wiped out. The city Thad grew up in, where his elderly parents live, is gone.
I knew after seeing the hospital being hit on TV that my parents' house, being west of the hospital, had already been hit. So at that point, I knew I had to do something.
Stacy stumbles into the street, stunned at the devastation. The 20 survivors from the refrigerator exchange phone numbers. In those few minutes, they've developed a bond that will last a lifetime. They hug before parting ways, in search of answers about their families.
My car was upside down. I start walking down the street, and I had my camera in hand. I started photographing the things around me. I just kept walking and photographing and crying and looking everywhere. I don't know what street I was on, so I just stopped by this stop sign that was like on the ground. So I sat there on the curb. I called my boss, and I was like, I'm okay. I don't know how to get out of here. And I just sat there waiting.
Running on adrenaline, Dusty navigates the 13-kilometer gauntlet home through twisted metal, overturned cars, and demolished homes. He's relieved to see that his house is fully intact. He prays his family is safe inside.
So I got to the door of my house after running that far, and as I'm coming inside, I kind of walk up the stairs, and they're in the bedroom upstairs. And I was completely soaked, obviously from rain, and my wife said, "Why are you wet?" And I said, "Do you not know what's happened?" And she said, "No, power went out however many hours ago. And, we've just been sitting up here." They had no idea, thank goodness, of what happened.
It's a stroke of luck that Dusty's family is unharmed, and evidence that tornadoes can cut a distinct line between utter annihilation and coming out completely unscathed. For Thad, when he makes it to his parents, he discovers the house is severely damaged.
Thankfully, they were fine. Shaken up, of course. I continue to walk through the house, checking to make sure what's going on. The roof's blown off part of the house. I see a piece of 2x4 that has gone completely through an outside wall through a toaster. When I look down my parents' hallway, I see pictures, one right after another. Not touched, not even turned sideways. just as if they had always been. There's a picture of my sister and I, family members, grandparents, still on the wall. And that's when you begin to realize how important the photographic image becomes. The very next day after that, I'm back at the church, and a gentleman come in off the street, and he found a picture in his front yard. He says, "What am I supposed to do with this? This doesn't belong to me. I want to get this back to them." That's when the connection starts happening. Now that's where the picture is becoming more clear of what we needed to do.
Inspired, Thad takes on the task of reuniting people with their lost photos in the wake of natural disasters. In the aftermath of the tornado, new friendships are formed.
About a month after the tornado, we all met up at the gas station to kind of see how everybody was. It was interesting to be so near death with all these people, and then to see them again, and to know that we all survived that moment together.
The Joplin tornado shows the incredible power nature can have.
This tornado was caused by an intense supercell, and the tornado itself was over 1 kilometer wide, had a track that was over 36 kilometers long, grew explosively, and also had that direct impact on a large city, which is something you don't see a lot. Winds from this wedge-shaped tornado reached 200 miles per hour, and the damage was estimated at $2.8 billion, making it the costliest tornado in US history. In 38 minutes, it killed 158 people and injured thousands. The Joplin tornado was the deadliest tornado in the US since modern record keeping began there in the 1950s.
Despite the catastrophic consequences of the Joplin tornado, for some, it has created purpose. Since that fateful day, Thad has helped hundreds of families and survivors find lost memories.
In the Joplin, Missouri tornado, we collected over 35,000 photographic images. We have returned over 18,000 to date, and we're very proud of it. It's a lot of work to do that. Summer of 31, that's fantastic, because it tells us when it was. Over 900 families that received a photograph back, and the response has been overwhelming. We're so happy to have helped them, and we want to continue to do that with this city and other places too.
Years later, Dusty has found a new perspective as a result of surviving the deadly tornado.
A lot of people have asked me over the years how it affected me, and it didn't affect me negatively at all. I love storms, oddly enough. It's not that I don't have respect for storms. I'm not going to fear them. I think something that strong and of that magnitude, it's going to take you when it wants to. But I think that's the way Mother Nature works sometimes.
While Joplin survived the cataclysmic force of an EF5 tornado, in California, a construction worker is trapped by yet another deadly act of nature, a fire-nado. The devastating twisting winds of a tornado can rip the roof off a house in seconds and demolish entire towns in minutes. But what happens when a tornado and fire unite? Sparks fly off the flat tire of an RV along a highway in Redding, California. They ignite the roadside brush. The ensuing blaze engulfs an area 3 times the size of Washington, D.C.
The car fire had been spreading for multiple days, but there was some concern that it was going to spread to the east with some stronger westerly winds, kind of downslope winds, into the northern part of the Central Valley near Redding.
That's Redding right there.
Terry Cummings is part of a team of heavy equipment operators tasked with carving a dirt trench around a subdivision of homes. The containment lines are 3 bulldozer blades wide and designed to halt the advance of the wildfire.
Fire is made up of heat, fuel, and oxygen, and What we're doing in a bulldozer is we're removing fuels from the ground by scraping it and pushing it out of the way or creating a break in the fuel. While we were cutting those lines, I'd been watching the fire. I was starting to get concerned because of how close it was getting. I didn't think it was going to escalate the way it did.
But the fire isn't the only thing crews need to worry about. The fire also receives a tornado rating.
With maximum winds of 143 miles per hour, it was rated as an EF3.
Terry has no idea a unique set of disastrous conditions is brewing.
We usually do our shift changes between 7 and 9. My relief was more novice, and I was watching the fire behavior, and I told him I was going to stay on for another hour or so to make sure everything was safe. I noticed fire catapult through the air, and I looked over to my right. All of a sudden, the fire was burning on the sides of these houses next to me. Within minutes, everything became fire. It was just like a shower of fire started happening all around us.
No one could have predicted what was about to happen next. One of the rarest natural disasters develops right before Terry's eyes. A fire-nado.
A fire-nado or a fire tornado is you have a fire-generated vortex that's rotating, and then it extends upward into a pyrocumulonimbus cloud. It's a fancy way of saying you have a tornado made of burnable material that's attached to a thunderstorm cloud.
When a cold pocket of air appears above an extremely hot fire, the heat rises quickly in the same fashion that a tornado forms. Gases drawn up into this column can ignite in the air.
Fire tornado is extremely dangerous because they are unpredictable. They can move rapidly, and they can spread fire quite rapidly as well, too.
In the blink of an eye, Terry and his crew are surrounded by fire.
It was within minutes. There was no start or no end of the fire, just everything was engulfed.
Being in the path of the fire-nado is a near hopeless situation.
With an EF3 rating for damage, that can debark trees, it can overturn train cars, it can destroy stories of well-built houses. And then you add a fire to that, is not only are you destroying structures with wind, but you're also burning these structures as well, too. If it's so hot that you can melt metal, and then you have winds of 140, 145 miles per hour, that's pretty much a worst-case scenario in terms of a weather event.
Terry has no clear way out. He's surrounded by fire, and his radio communication is failing. Unsure of his fate, Terry can only think of one thing, his girlfriend, Shalai.
I texted Shalai. I guess I just wanted to tell her I love her.
Just as Terry hits send on the text, the fire intensifies.
I looked up, seeing two vehicles. This big dust cloud just engulfed the rear vehicle, like he just disappeared. So I started to turn my dozer to deflect the debris. I didn't want it to break my window, but as soon as I started to turn, my window glass broke, and then all my glass around me broke. It was like I just got hit by a freight train. Then I was like blacked out, and I just heard noise. I felt the tracks of the dozer on my left shin, and I reached out and caught the door jambs, and then I gasped for air.
Stuck in his bulldozer, surrounded by fire, and with winds over 230 kilometers an hour throwing debris at him like bullets, Terry switches to survival mode.
I threw myself into the seat, and I grabbed a bag and stuck it over my face. The winds that were hitting me, it was like a blowtorch. They were really, really strong and really, really fast. I was just screaming and holding on and just guarding my face with the bag. I was thinking, not like this, Lord.
The dire situation is exceptionally rare.
Fire tornadoes are extremely rare, with only the 2 instances recorded. One in 2003 in Canberra, Australia, and then the other one just outside of Reading. And with only 2 documented instances of fire tornadoes, there's not a whole lot to go on. A fire whirl and a fire tornado are pretty similar. The main difference is usually size. Fire whirls are usually smaller, and they occur kind of on the edge of fires. Now, a fire tornado happens under a similar process, however, it's much larger. Fire is usually much more intense, and then the upper part of the atmosphere is usually more conducive for vertical motion and stretching. So a fire tornado and a pyrocumulonimbus is much more similar to a tornadic supercell than it is to a fire whirl.
In the maw of the storm, Terry is powerless.
The tornado came down, hit me, lifted me, tumbled me over, dropped me. I could feel it engulfing my waist, my neck, face, ears, hands. It felt like my limbs were just melting. It felt like they were burning off. I knew I was getting burned, but I didn't agree with it. And I'm like, no way.
In an adrenaline-fueled moment, Terry makes a break for safety.
I jumped out of the machine. I looked up and I saw two vehicle lights, and I made the decision to just make a run for it.
Somehow, he makes it through the blowing inferno to the vehicles.
I poured water over my hands, and then it was another, 20, 30 minutes, I guess, at least, before we escaped back out. It was a very unbearable pain in my hands, and just, I could feel it all around everywhere. But they got me to the ambulance.
Terry was one of the lucky ones.
That is unbelievable.
An EF3 tornado by itself is very strong and can cause severe damage. And then you couple it with a large, rapidly spreading wildfire, and the damage is pretty unbelievable. It was a half-mile wide at its widest, and also was on the ground for 2 miles.
There's 5 people that died. I think it was over 1,000 homes that were burned.
All the debris.
I feel blessed for sure. God was definitely present through it all.
Power line tower. That's crazy.
There's still no way of really predicting fire tornadoes. There's some scientists that are working diligently to produce forecasts for these, but still very early on in the process.
As scientists begin to untangle the rare firenado, their increasing ability to accurately measure and predict tornadoes is showing a change in when and where tornadoes occur, revealing an increase in the occurrence of the behemoth of them all, the supercell. In 2011, thousands of kilometers away from the scorched fury of a Californian firenado, another rare tornado phenomenon tears through the eastern U.S., a super outbreak.
Oh my God. Oh my God. Did you see that?
In the small community of Pleasant Grove, Alabama, machine shop worker Ray Watson listens to the news. They're calling for bad weather.
The day of the storm, everybody closed early because they were expecting bad weather that day. Most businesses closed at least by 3 o'clock. I kind of thought everybody was going home too early and overreacting. My wife was preparing dinner. I started watching a live feed video of the tornado going through town Tuscaloosa, which is just devastating. Tuscaloosa is probably 30 miles. Little did I know, in about 30 minutes, it was going to go through my backyard.
The Tuscaloosa tornado is just part of a rare tornado super outbreak.
An outbreak is when you've got a whole bunch of tornadoes occurring in a time period, usually the day, and over a certain location. That can be maybe 6 to 10 to 20 tornadoes.
There it is. Oh, it's a doozy.
The difference between an outbreak and a super outbreak is that instead of having the necessary ingredients for tornadoes in one location, one region, it's extended over a large area. And basically every thunderstorm that goes up ends up becoming a supercell and producing a tornado.
There it is. Good Lord.
As Ray watches the news, he has no idea that the tornado heading their way is just one of an astonishing 15 tornadoes rated EF4 or higher that will touch down across Mississippi, Tennessee, Georgia, and Alabama that day.
As I was watching it, it started veering only about 1.5 miles from my house. So I got my wife and I said, we got to go to the basement. Once we got in the basement, all the damage started hitting the house, and the house started shaking, and the ground started shaking. I pushed my wife into a front room that we had underneath our front porch. The roof to that room was a concrete slab. When we stepped in there, I said, well, the house just left. The sound of the house being ripped off the foundation, I mean, it's just like ripping a board in half. And it's pulling water lines into it, it's pulling the gas lines, things like that. And it's just ripping everything apart.
They're lucky to have made it downstairs. Even the best tornado warning systems leave little time to prepare.
Before the arrival of Doppler radar in the 1980s, it was really hard to get lead time on tornadoes. You're relying on someone to see the tornado, so obviously by that time the tornado is already occurring.
With a threat for hail the size of quarters?
Today, computer models take in all kinds of data. There's millions of points of data from satellites, from weather balloons, from surface stations, all coming in and being initialized so that the model can produce a forecast. With Doppler radar, you can actually see the rotation in the supercell thunderstorm that precedes the development of the tornado. Over the last decade, computer models have gotten really good at predicting the environment in which tornadoes can develop. What it's not good at yet is the exact time, the exact location. Today, the target is 10 to 20 minutes of lead time on a tornado warning.
As Ray and his wife's house is ripped from its foundation, a supporting wall holding the concrete slab above them is torn away, and Ray's life is changed forever.
I actually blacked out for a few seconds. I woke up, I saw a concrete slab on my leg. I knew by looking at my leg, it wasn't going to be able to be saved.
Pinned beneath the concrete slab, Ray is desperate for help and to get his wife to safety.
My wife, she didn't want to leave me under there by myself. I said, well, you need to get out of here so you don't get hurt. So she did reluctantly. I was trapped, I was pressed against the concrete. Water lines had ruptured and there was water flowing through there, and I could smell natural gas, and I just thought this is it.
But then, a small miracle. A volunteer firefighter and a nurse come to Ray's rescue.
Just pure luck. The two most perfect people to come help me after that storm. He brought his little fireman axe and he put it at the foot of the slab while he got volunteers to pick it up so that it could be removed. And a guy just reached in there and grabbed my belt. And he said, I'll tell you what, I'm gonna reach in there and grab you by the belt when we get it over. He said, I'll do the pulling and you do the screaming. And that's about how it went too. And as soon as he did, the nurse, she walked over and they had done scared up rope and a stick and all this and made a tourniquet.
Ray is placed in an induced coma and undergoes several surgeries. As he predicted, he loses his leg. But April 27th was just one day of a longer super outbreak. Between April 25th and 28th, an unprecedented 362 tornadoes broke out from Texas to New York. The largest super outbreak in history. 321 people are killed, 316 on April 27th alone.
It was by us in just seconds, 10 seconds, and it just leveled houses. There were 6 deaths within blocks of my house. We rebuilt our house. We've got a storm room built in the basement. I take my cautions, but they're just a way of life down here. I've just been lucky.
Surprisingly, the super outbreak of 2011 extended all the way into Canada. But it's not the only incidence of a tornado in the Great North. And some researchers are trying to answer the question, are tornadoes spreading? Tornadoes, fire-nados, super outbreaks. While these dangerous weather events are generally known to occur in hot spots in the dusty south, in recent years, the number of tornadoes detected in Canada has been on the rise. But what's behind the worrying trend?
It was a beautiful day. It was hot, humid, and we decided to sit on the front deck for a while, and we were having a beer. And it kind of started to rain, some big drops.
There were massive drops, like they were huge. And I had said to Les, I've never seen anything like that before. Like they're huge, and it didn't even seem that cloudy out.
The rain clears, but while all else seems normal, something peculiar happens.
Our dog was going crazy, and we thought, why is he acting like that? It's quite clear outside. There's maybe a small cloud, but nothing that should make him so panicky. Lo and behold, he had a reason why he was in such a panic.
With warm, moist air from the south and dry, cooler air from the Rockies, Manitoba is vulnerable to tornadoes.
The prairies in Canada are an extension of the plains in the US, and the storms in the summertime, they move from the plains in the US up into the prairies in Canada, and that's an extension of that tornado alley.
Little did Lynn and Les know that the humid day they were enjoying would bring disaster. Before they know it, a tornado is bearing down on them.
I've never ever seen a tornado before or been in one, so okay, just go to the basement, then it'll just go right over top of us or by us, and nothing will happen. We had a sectional couch with the mattress, the bed out, and he grabbed the mattress and, smart thinking for him, put it over top of us, and he was trying to get also our little dog Teak underneath the mattress.
Then the tornado hit.
I panicked. It just seemed to happen so fast. It was like 10 engines of a train, or the train going by. Like, it was enormous. The sound was so loud.
I used every force of energy that I could to stay down there and strain. Don't know how long it lasted. I looked up and I could see sunny sky. I said, oh, the house is gone.
In just a few violent minutes, this record-setting tornado caused widespread destruction.
The Eli tornado is Canada's one and only tornado rated at the 5 level. It was one of only 9 tornadoes between 1999 and 2011 in North America that reached the EF5 level, with winds reaching 315 plus kilometers per hour. Very rare in Canada to get a tornado of that strength. In the last 20 years, we've only seen one EF4 and one EF5 in Canada.
As Les and Lynn crawl out from their basement, they see firsthand the destruction the rare EF5 Canadian tornado has caused.
It looked like a war zone outside. It looked like a bomb went off.
I was gonna get in my car. There was no garage, no cars. It was just glass, and the trees were destroyed, houses were destroyed.
The whole house was completely gone, stuff in the basement. And they always tell you that tornadoes don't suck below ground, but this one was different. It decided to do that.
But as happened with the Joplin tornado photographs, unusual things appear from amongst the debris.
This was my dress that I got married in 1976 to this handsome dude here. After our wedding, I had it dry cleaned, boxed it up, put it in the closet. The tornado took my dress. And the next day, my husband said, I'm going for a walk into the field, which is across from where our house was. And I'm going to go check and see what I can find. And I wish I would have videotaped him, but here he come across the field holding my dress. We built in the same spot. It's changed my life in a lot of ways, and both of our lives, but also to be thankful for the things that we have. You know, we're happy to be alive, that's all I'm saying.
But what do events like the Eli tornado tell us? Is the danger for tornadoes increasing?
A lot of the data associated with tornadoes has been changing over the years due to human factors. Our cities are growing, and the areas that are vulnerable to tornadoes are also growing. And the number of people that can report tornadoes in those areas are growing. So somehow you've got to look at the data and try to pull out a trend that is unaffected by all these human factors.
So what is the data saying about how these weather systems are evolving?
The US has been finding that the number of tornadoes has not really increased over the years, but they've become more clustered, so that when you have an outbreak, there are more tornadoes in that outbreak, but there are less tornado days through the year. Another change that's been detected is a slight change in the location of Tornado Alley in the U.S. It's starting to move slightly northeast. Whether that's due to climate change or not, we don't know. Making the links to climate change is the next step.
Researchers are also trying to unravel the increasing reports of tornadoes in Canada.
The Northern Tornadoes Project is a project at the University of Western Ontario that aims to detect every tornado in Canada, try to get a true picture of where tornadoes are occurring across the country. In Canada, we have noted an increase in the number of tornadoes in a number of locations. A lot of that is due to the increased number of reports that we're getting. There's also a concerted effort to get those reports.
In our digitally connected world, more companies are also creating increasingly advanced smartphone apps that not only track the weather, but track tornadoes and help direct users away from the path of danger.
4.5 billion people own a smartphone. That's just revolutionized our ability for meteorologists, for public safety officials, for anybody who needs to stay up to date with what's happening with severe weather. RadarScope takes the raw binary data that comes out of the Weather Service radar and downloads it directly to your phone and then renders the image on your phone. Everything with tornadoes and tornado alertings are not measured in hours, they're measured in minutes. And so everything we're trying to do is just carve out a few more minutes.
A few minutes can mean the difference between life and death. The peace of mind from accurate detection could be priceless.
My mother and I have this ongoing argument about it. Every time there's a storm, she obviously freaks out because she's afraid it's going to head right for her little baby boy. I always tell her, Mom, God and the tornadoes had a chance to get me that day, and they decided not to. And she said, boy, you have to remember, you know, you're not 10 feet tall and indestructible.
Whether the range of tornadoes is expanding isn't clear, but while scientists work to decipher the changing patterns of tornadoes, the quest to understand their total impact and gain a few precious minutes of warning continues.